Today's episode is sponsored by theSiouxEmpire.com, the quirky but harmless blog and podcast that's all about Northern Plains news, comedy, music, and culture. Episodes weekly on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you find podcasts.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. Hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work and tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to The Art of Bombing, episode 51. I'm Dan Bublitz Jr., the host of this show. Hope everybody had a fantastic week. My week was pretty good. My weekend especially. It was a little busy, but it very, very enjoyable. That's right. Saturday, we went to a wedding in Fort Sisseton, South Dakota. My girlfriend's friend was getting married, so I was my girlfriend's date, obviously. I was her arm candy, but we went to this wedding at Fort Sisseton State Park, and then we camped there overnight in a tent, and that was fun, except that it rained, and it was noisy, so it was hard to get some sleep. Then Sunday, we had to go to Sioux Falls so we could film the intro for the video of my one-man show. Got that wrapped up. My friends came out and helped, and that was a handful of my friends came out and helped, and I'm very thankful for them. Got that wrapped up, and hopefully we will have that all completed by the end of the month, and then I'm going to try to get it into maybe a couple film festivals, and then we're going to put it up on Amazon to stream. On Amazon, it'll be available for purchase on Amazon, maybe even iTunes. I'm not sure. I got to look into all that, but either way, that's going to be coming out, and then I'm going to release the spoken word version of the one-man show too. So be on the lookout for It Was Supposed to Be a Love Story. That's going to be coming up. And then after I did that, I had a show. I performed at the Bonus Round Bar in the parking lot. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, a comedy show outside in a parking lot. That sounds horrendous. And guess what? You're wrong. It was fantastic. It was a fun show. It was great. I performed with some guys from Des Moines, Iowa, and that was fun. They all had great sets. And my buddy Skylar Bulks, who's been on this podcast, he books that show, and he had me out there. Thank you, Skylar. It was a fun time. They do a cool thing. You buy a ticket. Not only do you get to watch the comedy show, you get free play because the bonus round is a beercade. That's right. They have beer and arcade games, mostly pinball, but then they have some other vintage games as well in there. So you get free play. You buy a ticket, you get to watch a show, and then you get to go play video games for a couple hours for free. So that's cool. So if you're ever in Sioux Falls when they're doing it, it's a monthly show. So go see that show. I had fun. You'll have fun. Do it up. Do it up. Do it up. Do it up. Then after I did that show, I had to drive home, and that was a couple-hour drive. So I didn't get home until way late last night. And, and then I had to get up early. I had to get up for work. Oh, all the stuff. I don't know. But today on the show, we got a fantastic show. We have a comedian that's based in China. Oh my God, that is crazy, right? Nah, well, it is. No, it's not really crazy. It's fantastic is what it is, because this comedian is very fantastic, and I had a great conversation. Today on the show, my guest is Nora Yang. I met her at the San Diego Comedy Festival. She came all the way from China to perform in that festival, and we sat down and talked about the art of bombing, and it was a really cool conversation, and it was cool to get a perspective from somebody that's not based in America to get a different perspective on comedy from the other side of the world, if you will. And we had a great conversation, so that's what's coming up on the show. But before we get to that, a couple quick things. If you haven't subscribed, do so. Subscribe, leave a review. Do what you got to do to help me out, get me up there. I get this podcast going. It's a great podcast. It's a great tool for comedians, but I need to get it out there, and I need your help with that. I'm doing what I can. That's right. I actually paid for advertising. The Art of Bombing has sponsored the School of Laughs podcast. That's right. So the next month, you're going to hear my little ad. If you listen to that podcast, you'll be hearing my ad on their podcast. So that's pretty cool. That's right. I paid money, ladies and gentlemen, real money, putting some effort into this podcast. So I don't know. So leave me a review and subscribe. That's what I need from you. If you want to give me money, you can. I have a Patreon set up with some cool perks, and that's at patreon.com/Dan Bublitz Jr. Go check that out. And that's all I'm going to plug with that. Upcoming shows, I've only got a couple. I'm taking most of July off to just go do fun stuff with my girlfriend and my friends. It's summertime, right? Why not? Because one of the things, I'm meeting my girlfriend's dad for the first time. We've been dating for 2.5 years, and I still haven't met her dad. And her dad sounds like a pretty cool dude. He's a blacksmith, like an old-timey blacksmith. That's right. He makes metal products. He makes a lot of stuff for the military, and he makes movie props. Some of his props and some of the things that he's made have been in some pretty famous movies. He's did some stuff for the Pirates of the Caribbean, and he's did stuff for The Reverend. So that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool stuff. And the cool thing, not only do I get to meet her dad for the first time, we're meeting him in Creede, Colorado for an event called Rendezvous, and that's where a bunch of people get together and rendezvous and live like pioneers, if you will. I guess that's what it is. You live in tents and you shoot black powder weapons and make stuff and live off the land, kind of in the mountains. So I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully her dad likes me, because he may be able to murder me. He probably could, and nobody would ever know I was gone. And I don't know. I could just disappear. Who knows? It's going to be an adventure. I'm going to be without technology. I got to live off the land and be a survivor. I'm pretty sure I can do it. I was in Boy Scouts, so I'm not that worried. That's going to be a fun time. Then I'm going to Warped Tour. That's right. I'm going to Warped Tour, and I'm very excited about that. All my life, I wanted to go to Warped Tour, and I never did. I never did. I always talked about going. I was almost going to go last year, and a bunch of the people that I was going to go with all kind of backed out, and so I just decided not to go. And then this year, since it is their last year touring the Warped Tour Festival, a bunch of my friends decided we were going to go, and plus there's a lot of bands that we want to see. One of my favorite bands, Real Big Fish, will be there, and I'm excited to go see them. So that's what I'm doing in July. Then, July 30th, I do have a show at Boss's Comedy Club. It is the SuperCon fundraiser. We are raising funds to help put SuperCon on, and the show is going to be me. It's a comedy and magic show. That's right. It's going to feature me, my friend Dan Mergansky, as he is driving from San Diego to Chicago because he's moving. He's going to be on the show. Skylar Bulks, who I mentioned earlier, he's going to be hosting the show. There's going to be magic and comedy from Travis Nye, and then my friend Nathan Holtz, who's also been on the show, is going to be performing on that show, and the tickets are $10, and the proceeds of that show go to help put on SuperCon. Then August 10th, it's our 1-year anniversary at Oh So Good Restaurant in Garrettson, South Dakota, and I'm headlining that show. That's right. I book it and I host it, and I decided that I'm going to headline one of these shows. Because why not? Because I can do that. I'm abusing my power. I don't care. Skylar Bulks is going to be hosting that show, and Jenny Lou Rusi is going to be featuring, and she is a fantastic comedian, and maybe I can get her on this show. I should have a conversation with her, because she is a fantastic comedian. So that's what's coming up. Now, let's get into this conversation on the art of bombing with Nora Yang. Enjoy. You came all the way from China.
Yes.
To the San Diego Comedy Festival.
I know. A lot of audience came to ask me if that's real or it's a joke. I'm like, it's real. I can show you the ticket.
No, I believe it. For some reason, I knew, when the submission came through, I guess, for some reason I thought you were in L.A. now or something. I don't know. But I knew you were from over there because your video was from a show over there.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I was thinking you were in L.A. now or something. But
Cool.
I don't know. I see so many comics and things like that. We just all blend together.
I know. We all look the same to you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
You're like,
yeah.
oh, isn't that girl from LA? No.
That's how I feel about all comedians. It's not, yeah, we all just look the same. We're the same comedian, just in all over the place. There's not thousands of comedians. There's only one. They just wear different costumes.
So sad. It's called multiple identities.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Where in China do you live then?
I based in Shanghai.
You're based in, how is it pronounced?
Shanghai.
Shanghai?
Yeah.
Okay, and how is the comedy scene out there?
It's really taking up fast. So it's divided into English comedy and Chinese comedy, as you can imagine. And I go with the shorter history one. The Chinese comedy, I think it started maybe maybe around 7-8 years ago, but like it's not really developing at all until maybe 4 years ago, and it kind of had a boom like 2 years ago or 1 year ago. So now it's like super, super popular. I mean, more and more young people get to know it, mostly through TV shows, actually. So there were a few comedy company already in China, in Shanghai, I mean, and then one of them produces some TV shows which have a huge audience, and it get people to follow the comedians or entertainers on Weibo, which is a Chinese version of Twitter. For example, the most famous comedians from that company got like 1 million or 2 million followers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I know that's a number that people cannot imagine here, but a lot of the celebrities get like millions of followers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and these two people become really popular, and then they kind of help introduce or help promote the whole offline comedy, which is you guys, the real comedies to you guys. But for Chinese audience, it's super new. So now there are more and more people come to watch offline show, and they see the difference because first of all, like, there are more censorship for sure for online TV shows. And then for offline, sometimes it's a small crowd, so people tend to be more flexible in what they're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge difference between what you see on TV versus what you might see in a live comedy show.
And like, put that times 10 is the big difference in China, because you can imagine a lot of censorship in China on TV.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's even bigger gap, and people get to really know about it. But that's for Chinese stand-up. And the problem or the challenge you're facing is that there's such a new form of art, so people are still learning it. For example, stand-up comedy is translated into 脱口秀, which sounds like talk show, or which is a Chinese equivalent of talk show. But simply because like stand-up, which is translated as 单口喜剧, it's such a new word to introduce to people. So many people just use talk show, the Chinese equivalent, to familiarize audience with the form of art. So we try to kind of correct them, because we know the difference between talk show and stand-up comedy. We wanted to differentiate them eventually, but now we're still getting there, slowly walking.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And do you perform both in English and in Chinese?
I do.
Interesting. Okay, so because now I'm curious because because I just had I did a conversation with a comic that does comedy in both English and Spanish, which here in Southern California that is actually kind of a big thing. It's the same thing. There's a market, and there's quite a few comics that do Spanish comedy for that. And we talked a little bit about how he said like his act, he basically does the same act whether it's in Spanish or whether it's in Chinese, but like he said there's some slight differences just because of translation and stuff. But do you find like when you do, is that how you kind of have the same set for whether you're doing English or doing your comedy in Chinese, or is it a little different because of the not necessarily the language, but like kind of the cultural differences of the audience?
Well, I have to say I'm super jealous, because for me it's totally the other way around. There's very little like similarity between the two comedy that I'm writing. Basically, only 10% of the jokes can be both funny in Chinese and in English.
Oh, wow. So you have to have almost two separate sets.
Yes. My Chinese set is almost totally different from my English set.
Oh, wow.
Which is super, super sad, because I have to double work on my
twice as hard
material. Now. And I was like, other people are like, oh, it must be a lot of overlap. So jealous. You just produce one and then you have two fruits. I'm like, that's not true.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, the culture difference is definitely one, and also cultural references, and also the perspectives, right? So for English, I usually, because the audience in China for both languages, for Chinese, it's definitely 99% is Chinese people. 1% of like expats who want to learn Chinese. And then for English, I would say it's like 60% of expats, and then 40% of Chinese people, like local people. So for English ones, I do jokes more on the culture difference references is little on, like that I'm a Shanghai girl or like, my personal story. I think that's the light touch, but the more is on the culture differences because that's funny. And then for the Chinese shows, it's more like I'm a girl like living in China. And as a girl, you will face a lot of pressure. That's like one side. And then, so you need to know the culture to know the joke, which is then not relatable to people who are not familiar with Chinese culture.
Oh, absolutely. And that makes sense because that is important to be able to differentiate that as a performer. Because I feel like sometimes when a joke bombs or doesn't do well, it's because the audience just doesn't get what they're like. If they do a pop culture reference and nobody in the audience saw that particular thing, you don't get it. And it's the same thing with cultural references.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the culture and somebody does a reference about it, you're not going to get it. The joke doesn't do well in that scenario.
Yeah, even if it's the same like pop culture reference and everybody's watching, for example, Avengers. So I really need to do this joke, which is like, the new trade war is going to make a huge difference to Avengers because now going forward, well, I don't want to repeat the joke because I don't think it's that funny yet, but
you're still working on it.
But basically, I'll just try to say that. That's why you will not see it in competition. But anyways, I just want to say that there will not be Iron Man anymore because we stopped selling iron to the U.S. So that's the joke.
Yeah.
And then it's funny to the English audience, but although everybody watched Avengers in China, the Chinese audience don't think it's that funny.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. They're like, it will take them because of course I have a twist. I'll be like, hey, who are you? I'm Superman. Hey, who are you? I'm Spider-Man. Who are you? I'm Ant-Man. Who are you? I'm Man. Hey, sir, you're not wearing any clothes. You're naked. Yes, I was Iron Man, but now China stopped selling things. That's how I play it. Yeah. For Chinese audience, it would take them maybe a second to figure it out. And then they'll be like, oh, yes, that's right.
Do you feel like maybe it takes them a minute just because you were talking about censorship over there and how, because I imagine, and I'm very ignorant because I don't know the culture that well, so I'm going to preface this with I'm very ignorant. But that the government over there is stricter with the people. Kind of political because of the two governments not working together or whatever. Would that be?
It's very funny how I would see it. I think that, of course, actually, we don't do a lot of political jokes, or to put it more clearly, we don't maybe not do it at all, but we don't touch anything that's purely about China.
Gotcha.
But since this one is like China's diplomatic relationship, so it's kind of a gray area that you can talk about it, and especially it's with the U.S. And I'm sorry, Trump is such a topic that everybody think it's fine. They don't find it to be political. They find him to be like
insane.
Sometimes even entertaining. Like he is not a politician. I feel in China people's mind, like everybody can talk about him.
No, absolutely. Oh, so, I gotcha. They don't feel like
he's kind of like a pop culture in that sense,
as opposed to being a leader.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, and I'm not surprised by that at all.
That's why I don't think. Well, that's true. I didn't really come across that one as a political. I thought, oh, it's Trump and pop culture. So it's a kind of like pop culture.
Yeah.
But China people wouldn't laugh at it. I think it's more because they think it's a thing. It's a truth. It's a fact.
Yeah.
They don't find it to be funny. So that's an example of how even people know about it, they wouldn't probably laugh at it.
Oh, that's interesting. Because that is interesting where it's like, because like in America or English comedy, a lot of the jokes that are the funniest are the ones that people can relate to and understand. You know what I mean? Like they get because of that, because they are real. Where like comedy comes from truth. So that's interesting because that's like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, very interesting. Yeah, I just want to go on record, and I'm sure the TSA listens to this because of my podcast. But yeah, I don't like that guy. He's just making. We already look bad enough in this country because of the way we're so dumb and ignorant, and then now he is almost a great example of what America can be. It's so sad, but
I mean, yeah, I heard that like he's now blocking people or like not issuing visa to Chinese people if you say anything bad about him on social media.
Oh my God!
I read about that news. I'm like, oh my God! All the comedians is not gonna enter U.S. forever because everybody somehow mentioned about him in their social media.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, it's bad. I'm not a fan. Well, yeah. That's what I'm going on record as. He is not a representation of me.
Yeah, that's very relief to know.
Because people that are like on social media that know me, I've gotten many heated and unfriended a lot because I for a while there I kind of got into politics and I was very against everything that he did, but then finally I was just like, you know what, you can't argue with these people because they just don't get it. And I was starting to drive myself nuts just from the stress of dealing with them and the ignorance of them. And I was just like, I can't do it anymore. So now I try to stay away from politics as best I can. And it's been doing wonders for my health.
Oh, that's good to know.
Not nearly as stressed as I was before. But it's still bad. But now that we got a little bit of backstory, which I think was interesting to see the kind of the differences. So one of the things I always like to talk about on this podcast is you telling a story about one of your worst shows where you bombed really hard. So let's hear about one of the times you bombed hard.
So
and it can be either English or in Chinese.
I will do a quick one on each. So the English show that I remember the most that I bombed is actually my very, very first show. And it might be surprising to you, but that I would even mention about that. But to me, it was the worst because I was a very confident person before I come into comedy. I always thought I'm funny with my friends and this and that. So when I first got into comedy, people invited me to try. And I was like, just 5 minutes and make people laugh. I can do that. So that was English. And I did not do any preparation. I just think about some story to tell. And I remember when I walk in, and then all the guys before me are like just surprisingly all are white guys. Like, and then
you weren't expecting that.
Even in Shanghai, it's like all white guys.
Wait a minute,
no other.
Apparently, when you walked through the door of the comedy place, it was like you went into an alternate universe.
I was expecting something, more diversified, but. So I walk up to stage, and it was good open mic. I walk up to stage, I was like, okay, everyone, you've heard story from the other side, which is guys, and which are like foreigners. Now you're seeing story from the other side, which is a girl from China. And I said that, and then all the audience, they just went super engaged to looking very defensive.
Oh.
So their whole body language is like from leaning forward to leaning backward.
Oh, man.
And at that point, I was like, oh, my God, I think I'm going to bomb this thing. So even though I said the story and I tried to be really, funny, entertaining, whatsoever, but nobody really gave any sound even during that 5 minutes. And that really kind of crashed all my confidence within that show. And after that, like the owner of the club, and he was like, hey, don't give up. Don't give up. I feel like you're never going to come back again.
It saw it in your face when you were up there.
Yeah. And I was like, oh no, I just have somewhere else to go. He's like, no, you don't. You just don't want to stay here anymore. And he's like, tell me what I'm going to do. I'm like, I just have friends. He said, no, you don't. Just stay and talk to me.
You don't have friends.
He was.
I just watch you do comedy. I know you're lying. You don't have friends.
Yeah. He was really reading my mind at that point, because at that point, I just want to run away from that place. And I feel like I should not do comedy. I was be ignorant and arrogant. And, but he talked me through. He's like, first of all, this is your ever first time, like what do you expect, like? And then he said to me about something very important, which I believe you all know, which is comedy is not about someone told a funny story, but about a funny person tells a story.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
So he's like, it's very important for people to like you in the first a minute or so, especially in the open mic where it's only 5 minutes. He's like,
absolutely.
what you said there is basically getting people to wear their armors with you, which is not a good thing. That's why you bomb. He's like, it's not about your material, but it's more about how you approach your material.
Oh, absolutely. And that's
So,
very true. You
yeah.
you have to build that likability, and it's easy. Like if you go up there, because sometimes if you go up and you're super arrogant, not you, but I mean as a generalization, but
Yeah.
it's easy for to lose an audience just by going up
Yeah.
and seeming like a big dick.
I know.
A big jerk.
I know. I learned it from that very hard way. It was heartbroken day for me. So that was the one that I remember the most because it was just horrible. Like I can tell that my face from super like flexible to stiff just within 30 seconds.
Oh wow.
So
And that's another beautiful. That's a beautiful thing about comedy is the fact that it's so humbling.
it is. I learned to be just looking super soft and nice on stage, and then even if you say something like super sharp, later on people find it to be funny. So that's English show. For the Chinese show, I host. I started hosting like shows in Chinese, and then I go to other cities now. So I've done like in maybe 6, 7 cities now in China, and in one city that I went to, I did this like when I'm doing crowd work, I did this like regionalist, which is called like regional racist, I guess. Where like for example like,
like
North Cal don't
regional
like
comedy.
South
okay.
Cal, that kind of like
Gotcha,
regional ration. What do you call it? Is there a word for it even?
I would say I would call it regional humor
Oh,
or
okay.
something, or I guess well,
Anything equivalent to racist?
Oh, I guess then that would be racist comedy or like racism.
Oh, but it's not race. It's like just different
Oh,
regions.
demographical.
Yes.
So
demographic.
yeah, it would be demographical.
Okay, demographical. Okay,
Is what I would. Yeah, that would.
cool. Learning something every day.
Well, remember, I prefaced this a lot with saying I'm ignorant, so I could be wrong on that. So
I don't need to. I just say I'm Chinese. My free face.
yeah, right. So when you leave here, maybe go do some research just to make sure I'm no. Anyway, but yeah, I would consider that probably demographical.
But yeah, so I was just saying that, hey, lady, in the first row, like it's a comedy show. Just relax. You can put your back down because I'm not someone from Henan, which is a province famous for like stealing people's stuff. Like not famous, but having a stereotype. I was like, I'm not from that province, so you should be relaxed. So after that, and then maybe like a few more seconds, some guy was just yelling in the back really, really loud, even louder. And he just stood up and heckling me. And he said that, hey, you are demographically racist. Get off.
Oh wow.
I know. Like that's... He said it something like people should never judge other provinces, which is really funny in a way because I believe racism is one of the common theme in comedy. But as you can tell, like Chinese audience, they are still learning about the humor. So if you mention something, even if it's a mild reference, people still find it to be especially like, offensive and they don't find it funny. And there'll be people judging the art. And it's really bad because we have this like fan group chat or something. So he posted my picture on stage and then posted in the group chat. He said, why do you ask this like racist girl to host? It's not bad. It's not polite art at all. And then another comedian later on, he came onto stage and defend for me. He was like, just so you know, comedy is about not about being offensive, but about, pointing out pointing out conflicts and making it in a humor response.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you are not comfortable with people making reference to the racism, then which means you don't even want to face any problems in your life because all your problems can be racism or can be conflicting. But if you don't face a problem, how can you solve it? So he kind of do like a 2-minute TED talk.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to educate that one single audience because he's influencing other people to think that, oh, why are you guys being so offensive? It's not the right form of an art. But that is comedy. And they will be surprised to see how people are talking about politics, for example, in other countries in stand-up, which is like, people find it not funny, but they would not find it not appropriate. If you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They might not like it, the joke, but they're not going to be offended by it. They're just, it wasn't funny to them.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, too, with comedy. It's so subjective.
It is. And that was super bombing because that was the first 5 minutes of the whole show. So I can tell even the people who were laughing get really intense. So they look at me with sympathy, to be honest. Like the whole is like, I wonder how this girl can turn this around. And I'm like, I don't want to come back to the stage if I have to introduce another like 5-6 comics.
And that sucks too when you're hosting a show and you bomb because you have to keep going up there. So
Yeah.
not only do you have to bomb and face that feeling of bombing,
Yeah.
you have to go endure it every time you go because you have to go look at that audience.
Yeah.
When if you're just on the show and you bomb, you can sneak out the back if you want.
I know. And I have to force a smile because I'm the type who always smile on stage, so it will look super different if I don't smile. So I almost cry. Like literally when I get off stage of my just opening, all the comedians come to hug me silently.
Oh man.
I was like, no,
That's
you
when
can't
you know
do that.
it's rough.
I'm gonna cry. Like you're going to see a
Making
tear.
this worse.
Yeah, literally every single person come embrace me. I'm like, no. And then as you can imagine, like this kind of incident kind of spread out really fast. So when I was hosting the show, like a lot of people from like back in Shanghai, and they heard about this already from other people, and they texting me saying that, we support you. I'm like, you guys have to stop doing this like super warming and touching thing. I'm literally going to cry on stage. So yeah,
This is not helping.
it's not at all. Like I'm forcing a smile, and I have tears in my eyes, so I don't like that show at all.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that sounds rough. Definitely. I was. Where did I want to go with it? I had something I wanted to ask you when you were talking about that, but it's spacing my mind.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of. Oh damn it! I forgot what I was going to ask you. There's something there that I wanted to ask about that. Actually. Now I remember what I was going to ask you. So have you performed in America then before?
Once. So last year I was at Burning Man.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was my first time at Burning Man. It was a long story, but I went to Burning Man by myself, and I got into an art camp with my stand-up skills. So I performed at a camp. I performed at a comedian camp. I met some actually female comedians from San Francisco, and I performed at a stand-up camp. So I performed 5 shows at Burning Man. That was my only experience performing in the U.S. before.
Oh, wow. That's what an experience what a way to break into comedy in America and at Burning Man.
I know, which is super, super subjective.
Oh, I'm sure.
'Cause,
I haven't been to Burning Man, but I know a lot of people.
But that's what happened. Like all the people in California don't go. It's so close. I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Well,
flew all the way from China to
I
just
know, right?
go. You guys are like, yeah,
Well,
I heard it's
also-
fun, but I'm not going.
Isn't it expensive though? Like
They
it's
have like early bird ticket, $500, I think.
you know. You're over there like, they got early bird ticket like $500. I'm over here like $500 is like my rent.
Okay, but once in your life,
Apparently, I need to move to China and do comedy because it's seems more lucrative.
yeah, I'm using my daytime job to support my comedy.
Oh, see, well,
I'm
there you
making
go.
zero money so far if you count it in the transportation
wow.
expenses that I've been paying.
Yeah.
But,
What do you do then for a real job? Just out of curiosity.
I have been a strategy consultant,
Mm-hmm.
but I just quit and I moved into in-house strategy. Yeah,
For, like-
I haven't started for retail company,
Oh, okay.
for consumer retail company. I haven't started this new job yet because I wanted to start it right after this trip, so I don't have to take annual leaves.
Oh, absolutely.
So
that makes
my new
sense.
boss is like, yeah, that would be fine. And he's like, can you work right after you come back from US? I'm like, can I have just one day to recover from jet lag, please?
One day.
Can I? He's like, okay, I'll give the mercy of just having one day. I'm like, okay, thank you so much, you crew boss. But that's,
Hope they don't listen.
I know,
Oh,
I
man.
know.
Well, so much
His
for that,
English
then.
it's not that good, so I'm very confident that.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, there we go. That's good. Very good. Very good here. Yeah, I think I seen when you just sent me a friend request on the Facebook the other day and or last night, and I seen we had a mutual friend, Erica.
Oh,
who
yeah.
Did you meet her at Burning Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you said that you were at Burning Man, I
Yeah.
wondered because she goes there a lot. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So-
was super cool there. But the thing is, because that was my first time performing ever in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
I was not sure how much of my material can relate to people here. So, and plus, Burning Man, everybody's really drunk all the time.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people are under the influence of a lot of things.
Yeah, and so when I got there, I realized my tension does not match with their tension. I'm like, okay, I need to get myself ready. So my very, very first show, I get myself like 3 shots before I go to perform. And it was great because they were drunk and I was drunk, so I remember everybody was happy.
Oh, that's all that matters. If everybody's happy, it's a win.
Yeah.
Did you? So how did you feel about the shows? Did you feel like they went good?
Yeah. I think all of the shows, but that was my first experience. Later on, I realized if I want to remember my stuff and I want to remember the people's audience and reaction, I have to be sober.
Oh,
so I only took 1 shot later on before.
Oh, nice.
Which is already a lot for me because I don't really drink that much.
Oh, wow.
But I just
take a shot of?
I still took it because I wanted to be a little bit more relaxed.
Kind of smooth out the edge a little bit. If you will.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about your set last night at the comedy festival? You were part of the Clean Showcase.
Yes. I think it went better than I thought. I'm happy about that because I saw the audience is very family. Because another thing about China, even for English shows, I think the audience average age is much lower in China.
Oh, much
than
lower.
Here, much lower.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here you will see people even over, I guess, 50, 60,
absolutely.
70, right?
Yeah, a lot of older people go to comedy
Yeah,
shows.
back there, for Chinese shows, I think the average age is 20 maybe.
Oh, wow.
20, 25. I think that's an average
it's a lot
age.
Of younger people
it's
going
much
to
younger. There are a lot of college students because it's a new form of art. So the companies wanted to cultivate the culture by not sponsoring but promoting stand-up in universities.
Oh, absolutely.
So they will go there and then work with the student to form a student club of stand-up comedy, and then ask more people to join, to try and to play around, to really try this out. And then for English shows, the average age is slightly higher, but still, I have not seen anyone, I think, who's extremely over, maybe 60. Very few people who are over, I guess, 50, 60
wow. That's
there.
very interesting, actually.
Yeah, so I don't know why, but maybe it's because people don't really live in China. They wanted to move back to their hometown when they reach a certain age.
Oh,
so
that could be.
The expats in China are more like the working age or more,
kind of pre-retirement.
Yeah, so that's a huge difference. So yesterday I was like, oh my God, it's such a family crowd. I see people, who's gray hair. I'm like, I've never performed in front of people like that. Maybe they don't like my jokes. So I was worried a lot, but it went, I think, better than I thought.
I thought you had a fantastic set. That's why I was asking.
Thank you.
I thought you did great. It was a good set. Well, I have this this kind of tag, I guess, if you will, that or not tag, it's, the title of what I call it. I call it the bumming of bombing, and that's the feeling you get after you bomb. That dreadful feeling we all get when we bomb. How long does that typically last for you before you start feeling like, okay, you can still do this?
It depends on if I have any other shows after that bombing show.
Mm-hmm.
If I have another one, but that one went great, then I'll just forget about the previous one. But if I have another one which does not do, it was average, then it would take me maybe just a night to recover, and then the next day I have to kind of I think the good thing I see myself is that I'm quite optimistic. So I don't really get dragged or get stressed easily. And I know that a lot of other comedians, this is one funny thing. I realize a lot of comedians are actually quite depressed off stage.
Oh, yep.
Okay, you just acknowledged it, which is super depressing to me.
No,
I was hoping you could kind of deny it, because I heard about those.
This is something that I've kind of come
Really?
to see, is that they're because it seems like there's this I don't know, trend, if that's the right word for it, but a lot of comedians think they need to be sad, depressed to do comedy.
What?
And I've been noticing that, I've been listening to another podcast that's about comedy, and the guy that he teaches comedy and he does a lot of private stuff, but he's more of a Christian comic, and he's very, very positive, and a lot of the guests that he has are from the kind of the Christian comedy circuit, and they're all very positive and very and it's weird to listen to that because it almost shows too, like you don't need to be sad, depressed to still do comedy and still be funny.
Yeah.
But like stand up, you see a lot of these TV shows about stand up. It always makes it look like it's got to be sad and depressing. So, but a lot of comics that I know are, they always seem sad and depressed for whatever reason. What I mean? Like, I try to be as positive as I can. Sometimes I get down. I mean, we all do. That's just...
You were just talking about how stressful you were before with the political thing.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's not depression. That's stress. And that's from trying to change people's point of view.
Oh,
you know what
okay.
I mean? Like, I'm not depressed about it.
I see.
I'm just stressed out because there's so many arrogant people.
I
and
see.
I'm a kind of the person that I want the world... I want it to be a good world for everybody. Like I believe in humanity. I'm not out just to make what's mine for me. You know what I mean? Like I want everybody to live in harmony. I sound like a hippie, but whatever. I mean, that's what it should be.
Are you born in October?
I am. Oh my God! Are you like reading my mind? Holy shit! Are you psychic too now? Now I'm getting freaked out. You believe in the astrology or something, or what?
Yeah, we are in this room just by ourselves, so
I know,
no pressure.
No pressure here.
I don't know your bank account yet, so
not yet. But hey, hold on, I'll get it out of you. But yes, I am. I am a Libra, so born in October. So
okay, cool. I just want to compliment your star sign. That's it.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. So I wouldn't call it really depression. It was, like I said, just more stress because I want to and then finally I just realized it wasn't worth arguing with people about it because people are just set in their ways. And so it's like, no point in this. So move on.
Well, that's the thing because when I go into comedy, I was like, oh, these people can really make normal things funny. They are very observative and they can see things from a very special perspective. They must be fun to hang out with off stage. But I was totally wrong because I tried that once and and plus those are like Westerners, right? And then we went out to drink and then all the comedians, not all, but just 10 people, and then we sit down, and it was the festival last year, so there are people coming from Australia, from, Southeast Asia, and we sat down, and I was like, hey, let's order, and let's drink, and then some people, first of all, they don't drink, they're like, I usually don't do drinking after the show, I just want to relax a bit, so they order a burger, and order the whatever, juice or Coke or whatsoever, and they started talking about the show, they're like, hey, what do you think about my show just now? I'm like, we are in the bar. They're like, yeah, hold on. So they went back to talk about the show. And then later on, I was like, this is not fun. We should party. We just finished a competition and we should just relax. They're like, why are you so energetic? Don't you feel that life is just,
Oh, wow.
I
could see where that would be sad.
I was super shocked. And then I talked to one of the girl from Australia. She's a comedian over there. And she was like, Nora, don't you know that most people are depressed in comedy? She's like, back in Australia, she doesn't hang out with a lot of comedians. She only hang out with 2 or 3 of them. And even with them, they don't drink. They just have tea and read books. I'm like, that sounds not like a comedian. She's like, but that's what happened.
Yeah, that does sound pretty boring. I'm not gonna lie. Hanging out with them would make me depressed. I mean, I like reading and I'll drink some tea, but
not.
I also like the sauce.
It's
in fact, last night. I mean, we didn't get drunk, but I went out with a couple of the comedians last night. We went downtown and hung out with some people downtown. And, we weren't talking about the show. We were playing video games, and
you don't want to talk about that all the time.
No, exactly. Well, and it's easy for comics to get so stuck in themselves and stuck in that's their life. That's all they want to do. They want to go to every open mic. They just want to think about comedy, and then they forget that in order to get funny and get better at comedy, you also need life experience outside of comedy because if you don't have anything, you lose something to pull from. If you're not living a life, you can't pull from life. And so, I try to go have fun too, and try to be as positive as I can.
Thank God. Good to know that. Because I was trying to also make friends. Now I think that those people, I don't know, I will become a therapist, I feel like.
Now you're like, I don't want to be their friend unless they're paying me $100 an hour to sit on my couch.
I know, for talking to them.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Before we get out of here, what do you try to do to get better when you bomb? What are some of the things? I know we touched a little bit about the going through and the different having to have different sets because of the language and stuff.
Yeah.
But
so one of my endeavor or goal this year is trying to do comics in first of a different venue and also in different cities or countries. I believe that's like extremely helpful for myself because especially for English, like one of the comedians back in Shanghai, he's also a good friend of mine, Andy from Kung Fu Comedy, and he was like, if you want to improve your English stand-up comedy, you have to get out of China, because in China there's only Shanghai and Beijing that have like sort of big theme for English.
Oh, okay.
And other than that, you don't get much practices, and then you need to go to South Asia. For example, I heard Bangkok, like Thailand have a big theme. Singapore has something. India has a big theme, but I don't want to go there by myself because the security or safety issue. But then, he's like, go to Australia, go to US. It's like the more places you go, the more you realize how can you kind of diversify your material or your perspective, or how to materialize your style. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, that's good advice, and that's a good thing to do. That's some goals. That is definitely, because that does make sense. I mean, because in order to get better at something, you have to keep practicing and keep doing it. And if you're only limited to, certain areas, you got to get out there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. How can people find you if they want to know more about you?
Sure.
What's the social medias that you're on?
So, I am on, but that's all my personal
Do you have anything for
account.
Your comedy?
So I think because I'm based in Shanghai and I'm mostly performing in that Kung Fu Comedy Club for both English and Chinese, so you can find me on their website. Or if you just want to be the friend, I mean my Twitter and my Instagram is open at Nora Yang 37 or Nora NORASHI. That's my Instagram. But that's it. You will find my life, not necessarily restricted to comedy, but I assure you it's fun because I'm a fun person both on and off stage too. So, that's my difference with other comedians, I guess.
You try to be fun on and off stage. That's a good way to be. Maybe you're setting a new precedent. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
What a great conversation on the art of bombing. Wouldn't you agree? I thought that was a great conversation, and it was a cool perspective. And to see a different point of view from, or I should say a different worldly point of view, I guess, if you will, if that makes sense. Either way, the conversation was great, and I enjoyed sitting down with Nora Yang. If you ever get a chance, go see her live. If you're ever in China and she's performing, you can go check her out there. That'd be pretty dope, wouldn't it? And be sure to follow her social media, which will be in the show notes, because she gave us her social media. So check that out. All right, that's going to do it for episode 52 of The Art of Bombing. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Remember, stay safe so you can live to love. Bow, chicka, 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 wow, wow.